First, we're going to take you to that breaking news out of the United States overnight with the death of professional wrestling star and one of the world's most recognisable pop culture figures, Hulk Hogan. Born Terry Gene Bollea, Hogan helped propel WWE into a global phenomenon in the 1980s with his distinctive bandana and, of course, his blonde handlebar moustache. He appeared in numerous films, including Rocky III and Santa with Muscles, one of the classics. And he brought his blockbuster Hulkmania show to our shores in 2009.
His time in the spotlight, though, was never far from controversy, and in recent years he emerged as a political figure featuring in Trump's 2024 election campaign. North America correspondent Carrington Clarke is at the White House. Carrington, hello. So how is this wrestling star being remembered?
Yeah, good morning to you. Well, for many people, Hulk Hogan is synonymous with professional wrestling. He was the face of the form of entertainment as it rose in popularity from the 1980s, from a relatively obscure side entertainment to really a multi-billion-dollar behemoth. He was the face of the organisation with that distinct bleached blonde hair and handlebar moustache and buff bronze body. And he was able to withstand what is usually a short shelf life for athletes, and he had a career that spanned decades as he moved not only from through the wrestling ranks but also into other forms of entertainment, including movies but also reality television. And he really became a pop cultural icon. He appeared in multiple ads here in the United States but also around the world. This was a figure of huge pop cultural significance in the United States, but really one of those few figures that has name recognition globally, and that name recognition actually in part came thanks to Marvel Comics. That's where he got Hulk from, and he was actually paying money for a large part of his life to Marvel for the use of that name. But it seems like money well spent, given that his career did last for decades and it made him a very wealthy man.
Yeah, it certainly did. As you mentioned, he was loved by so many for so many decades, but there's also been a bit of controversy in recent years. Tell us about that.
Yeah, there were a couple of blemishes on his record, including he was taped using a racist term at one point, and that actually saw him kicked out of the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame for a brief period. But he also had a sex tape scandal where the website Gawker published a video of him engaging in sex with a married woman. Now, he successfully sued Gawker, and that lawsuit actually took down the company because of the huge settlement, the huge payout that they had to give to Hulk Hogan. So he effectively killed off Gawker. But perhaps the most controversial thing he's done in recent years is aligning himself so clearly with Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. He was there as one of the keynote speakers at the Republican National Convention last year. He seemed to be the speech that Donald Trump enjoyed the most. He ripped off his shirt at one point to signify just how on board the Trump train he actually was. That obviously was damaging to his those in the Democratic Party who supported him up until that point. But it did mean that today we did see the President of the United States taking time out to post on social media a post commemorating the death of Hulk Hogan, calling him the Hulkster and calling him a great friend.
Carrington Clarke, thank you.
Let's stay overseas, and Israel and the United States have withdrawn their teams from the latest round of negotiations for a ceasefire in Gaza. The breakdown in talks leaves 2 million in the Palestinian territory besieged and suffering from acute food shortages. Some of the pictures coming out of Gaza are absolutely horrifying, as our Middle East correspondent Eric Torchek reports.
Israel and Hamas weren't expected to reach agreement at this round of talks, but it was hoped that two sides could get closer and potentially sign a deal in the coming weeks. What happened was Israel has reportedly agreed to the latest 60-day ceasefire proposal put forward by the United States and, some sources suggest, crafted to largely suit Israel's requirements. The US and Israel were then waiting for Hamas's response, and it submitted that response with a long list of reservations. After that, Israel withdrew its team and the United States team withdrew as well. The US envoy, Steve Witkoff, described Hamas's conduct as uncoordinated unmotivated and not in good faith. He accused the militant group of acting selfishly and said the US will now consider other options and try and retrieve the remaining Israeli hostages that are still in Gaza. Israel, however, is speaking a little more positively. It says it believes a ceasefire is still possible, but it withdrew its team because large gaps remain between its position and that of Hamas. Israeli media is reporting the main obstacle at this stage is Hamas's request that Israel release prisoners arrested on suspicion of participating in the October 7 attacks. Also, it's asked for more prisoners serving life sentences. Hamas sources, however, are telling other media outlets that the main dispute remains the central one that's been plaguing these negotiations all along. The fact that Hamas is seeking a permanent end to the war and wants a guarantee that if the 60-day ceasefire period expires without further agreement, that Israel won't return to bombing and besieging Gaza again.
Eric Twarchek reporting there. Well, in other news, one of Australia's largest disability support services and employers is set to enter voluntary administration. Bedford runs 22 sites across Adelaide and regional South Australia and says more than 1,400 people with disability will be affected by the decision. The South Australian Premier will meet with Bedford today.
The Northern Territory's 4 Aboriginal land councils have accused the Territory Government of overt racism and human rights abuses. The Central Land Council's Deputy Chair described the government's prison policies as stacking and racking Aboriginal people in overcrowded jails. The NT Government has issued statements claiming its policies have seen some improvement in property crime, including burglaries, since coming into effect.
Environmental groups say federal and state governments could be exposed to lawsuits after a climate decision by the International Court of Justice. The court has ruled countries that don't act to prevent climate change could be breaching international law. Darwin's Middle Arm Industrial Project and WA's LNG exports have been singled out as possible causes for other countries to bring legal action.
Russian authorities have confirmed the deaths of 48 people on board a passenger plane that crashed in the country's far east. Emergency responders found the wreckage of the plane on a heavily forested hillside south of its destination. It is believed the Soviet-era plane was nearly 50 years old and had long-standing problems.
Let's take a quick look at global markets now. The Dow has closed about 0.7% lower. Our futures are pointing down. The Australian dollar's dropped a little bit, but still not too bad, 65.87 US cents.